Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here. My name is Tammy, and I'm a volunteer with Clear Skies Ahead. I recently retired as a 777 captain, and I've had the opportunity to see this system from both a professional and a personal perspective. We're really glad that you chose to spend this hour with us. This webinar is hosted by Clear Skies Ahead, a nonprofit dedicated to improving the health and safety of aviation professionals through education, research, and support. We believe safety doesn't just come from regulation. It comes from a culture where health and well-being are treated as foundational, not something to hide or delay. A quick disclaimer. Before we begin, volunteers at Clear Skies Ahead have either been through this or are currently navigating this process themselves. These sessions are here to provide the kind of information we wish we had had. We are not providing medical, legal, or case-specific advice. This is strictly educational. This is part of the 12-part series designed for non-airline aviators navigating the FAA medical, especially where mental health and substance use is involved. When we say non-airline aviator, we're talking about student pilots, GA pilots, Part 135 and Part 91, CFIs, AG pilots, drones, ATC, and pilots who are no longer in their airlines for whatever reason. It's important to remember that every airline pilot starts here. Our website is a central hub for this series, and where you can also find there at our website the recordings, tools, and expanded content of what we talked about today. So today's flow is very simple. It's a personal story, hopefully that we're going to be able to share for you in just a few minutes. We will find out if it works. That was by Morton Krug, who had a DUI, because today's topic is substance abuse and DUIs, and then we'll go do an educational deep dive into the FAA's risk evaluation of those situations. And after that, there'll be open question and answers with our panel. Before we transition to this, but we want to talk about how the system works. We want this grounded in real experience, and so that's why we're going to have speaker first. This isn't a process, it's just our policy because it's people. So our first speaker today is going to be Morton. He's going to share his getting his DUI, what led him to suffer through the process, and what he's been working through afterwards. And let's see if Kevin can, my tech support, can bring it up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Morton. I am an alcoholic. My journey into recovery in the HIMSS program started on the 30th of September 2021. I was arrested for driving under the influence. That day would end up changing my life for the better, even though I didn't know it yet. But it would prove to be a long and difficult road. Backing up a bit, I remember the first time I drank. It was at a friend's party the summer I turned 18. I also remember that I passed out that night, only to come to a little bit later and continue drinking. And that's not normal. I also remember my parents drinking quite a bit growing up, to the point where I would avoid them and just hang out in my room many evenings. Um, After that first drink in the summer I turned 18, for the next couple of years, I didn't drink very often, but when I did, it was with one goal in mind: to get drunk. It took away my shyness and my introvertedness, and that to me felt awesome. A couple years later, when I moved to the US and started a flight school at 20, it was a party. First, it was Fridays and Saturdays, then we added Sundays, then we added Thursdays, and pretty soon, the guys in my apartment and myself were drinking daily. After finishing flight school, I moved to Florida, working as an instructor. After a short stint in Orlando, I ended up in Naples all by myself. I knew nobody. I lived by myself. So, for me, the logical thing to do was to grab 6 or 12 beers at a gas station on the way home and, uh, and drink every night. After getting married, the drinking stayed more or less daily. And when I started my airline job at a regional, it continued to be fairly steady, more or less every day, to the point where I knew where all the gas stations were, the times they did and did not sell beer, and if I would get somewhere they didn't sell it at the time I got there, I would simply carry it with me. Um, I was not a social drinker at work. I did not want to go anywhere with the crew, since I was not going to be able to drink the way I wanted to. So I mostly drank by myself in my room. That didn't stop me from doing some very stupid things, but I never got in trouble with my job or with the law. At least not yet. In 2019, I started my dream job. I started to try to keep a lid on my drinking to reduce or stop while at work, but I couldn't really do that. I kept drinking fairly heavily at home on a daily basis. Then COVID hit, and I didn't have to go to work. I still got full pay, and that's when it got really bad for me. That's when I started drinking earlier and earlier in the day, and eventually I had to drink in the morning to cure my withdrawal symptoms. In the summer of 2020, we moved to Georgia, to a town where you can get everywhere on a golf cart, so booze cruises became the norm. And it was nothing to hop on the golf cart, beer and cup holder, and ride to the store for more. That is also where the last shred of control I had disappeared, which then led to my DUI arrest that morning of September 30th, 2021. Once my company was made aware of the arrest, I got a call from the HIMSS people there, and they convinced me, even though I argued against it, that I had no choice but to go to treatment. About 2 weeks later, I was at my first round of treatment. It was supposed to be a 5-week program, but being in total denial, even with an in-treatment relapse, I did not think that I had a problem, that it was the police officer's fault who pulled me over that I got a DUI. So I spent 11 weeks in a 5-week treatment program, just checking boxes, saying the right things so that I could leave. Upon leaving treatment, I made it exactly 5 minutes down the road before I stopped at a gas station and bought a couple of beers for the ride home. The next couple of weeks, I kept sneaking drinking around my house, but I was quickly found out. About 2 weeks after coming home, I was notified of a drug screen, a PEth test, which of course was positive. So the week following that, I was back in treatment. This time, it was a 98-day program, and as I entered, I started to believe that I did in fact have a problem that I needed to take care of. During my time in this program, I learned a lot about myself and about why I was doing the things I was doing. I also, during that time, learned that my uncle was 16 years sober and about the hereditary nature of alcoholism, so things started making more sense to me. I started working with an AA sponsor, going through the steps. After completing this 98-day program, I started working on my aftercare requirements laid out in the aftercare contract with my airline. And this time, due to the relapse, I was on a last chance work agreement, which was really scary, especially since every item said failure to comply is just cause for termination. About 4 months out of treatment, I went to my AME to submit the package to the FAA, hoping I would soon be back to work. But my disease had other ideas. I ended up drinking a couple of beers to celebrate submitting my package, and was subsequently caught on a drug test a day or two later. This led to my airline sending me to treatment for a third time. This time, the same 5-week program as the first time around, but I also ended up with a termination letter from my dream airline. I do not blame them for that, nor do I have any resentment towards them. They did, in fact, save my life, my marriage, and my family, and I am very appreciative of that. The time after the third round of treatment was not a good one for me. I started a new job as a simulator instructor for a regional airline and was back to drinking fairly regularly, especially since I'd gotten fired, and was close to giving up on going back to flying. Ironically, I had decided to pursue a master's degree in substance abuse counseling while in treatment the last time, so I was working on that while in the middle of a relapse. This went on for a while, but in August of 2023, I had made up my mind. I was tired of fighting it, so going through an IOP, my fourth round of treatment, for those of you keeping track, I had my last drink on August 19th, 2023. I changed AMEs, and with my new guy, in the spring of 2025, we put together a now rather substantial package to send to the FAA. Finally, in May of 2025, I received 2 denial letters, one for a missing or an out-of-date psychiatric evaluation, one for a request for more information, and to redo my cognitive screening. On May 8th, 2026, the FAA finally signed off on my special issuance, and I had my medical in my hand the following Monday. This journey had taken 1,681 days for my DUI until my special issuance was approved. Much of the delay was my own denial and refusal to accept my problems. Once I accepted them and made a conscious decision to use all the tools that I had learned through several treatment rounds and through AA and surrounding myself with sober people, I was able to come out the other side of it all with a medical to boot. I'm now working on getting back to flying I was very fortunate that I was arrested for a DUI rather than getting caught on a DOT test, which would mean that I would lose all of my licenses and ratings, sometimes something which I am pretty sure would have happened if I had not gotten caught when I did. Currently, I'm just a few months away from completing my master's degree, and I've started the doctoral program in clinical psychology. I hope to be able to make some real positive changes for those pilots struggling out there still. My wife and I are also very active in Birds of a Feather, which has played a big role in my sobriety. I did not believe in AA in the beginning. I thought there had to be a logical answer, a way to think myself to sobriety. But there really isn't. I looked. No matter what your personal feelings are towards AA, just try to be open to it, take what you like, and leave the rest. Thanks for letting me share my story.
All right. Thank you so much for Morton. He shared that with us because he couldn't be here in person. I have to say that I have been fortunate enough to work with HIMSS programs for nearly 2 decades now. And what he talked about relapsing when he submitted his package as a way of celebration is actually fairly common experience. And the other thing that's kind of unique to pilots and to him is like if you get caught before you actually have spent some time trying to not drink, it's very difficult to assess the risk on the situation. Alcohol's cunning, baffling, and powerful, and when you quit early, you sometimes have this willpower that other people don't have, and you haven't reached the gift of desperation yet. And it's, like I said, it's a lot of risk. So, how does the FAA examine the risk? We're going to turn it over to Stephanie. That's exactly what she's going to talk about next. And I think she's bringing up some slides. Is that right, Stephanie?
And thank you more for sharing your story. I know you would have preferred to be here in person, but we do appreciate having you record it as well. I am Stephanie Day. I am, for those of you who don't know me, I am on the HIMSS Advisory Board as the General Aviation Representative. I am in a car in Orlando because we're in aviation and I got stuck on a tarmac delay on the way down here and didn't make it to the Airbnb in time. So this is one thing that we have learned through this process is to go with the flow, progress, not perfection. And we're just doing our best here. We're trying to provide some resources and information to uh, help non-airline aviators just understand this process a little bit more, make it not quite so confusing. I have been given the opportunity through persistence, my own persistence and my journey in attending, I think I've attended 6 or 7 HIMSS seminars now, and it has just been a huge help in my education and understanding of this process. I've gotten something every time I have gone, even though a lot of the information is the same. I did just come back from the HIMSS Advanced Topics seminar in Hawaii, and there's been a couple adjustments. One change that is coming down is that we are getting rid of the title HIMSS, psychiatrist, psychologist. So it is just going to be called aviation psychologist, psychiatrist. So the FAA is eliminating that HIMSS signifier in front of the psychiatrists and psychologists. Still going to be called HIMSS AMEs because it's just kind of a cemented title in, but that will hopefully help lead to a little bit less confusion for those aviators who are in the mental health pathway. So they're not actually in a HIMSS program. They're not there for substance use, and it makes it a little bit less confusing, and it just creates a little bit more streamlined to be able to direct people to aviation psychiatrists and psychologists. The other good news is that applications are being processed much quicker. they're starting to streamline, they're starting to implement some AI, help to get things going a little bit quicker. And as long as you have a complete package and the FAA doesn't have to uh, ask for more information, and then you send that back and go back and forth with your AME, because that can really slow down the process when you're having to go back and forth. But if you have a complete package and they have everything they need to make a determination, I mean, there have been applications that have been processed very quickly within a month for sure. And so that is good news there. Things are moving along. I am going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about substance use and DUIs as far as where do you start? Because I talk to a lot of aviators who are, they tell me they had a DUI, when they were in their early 20s and they're now, 40. They may or may not, be drinking at this time. They may be sober, or it might just not be an issue, right? It might have just been a low BAC level DUI, and it was just kind of what even the FAA calls a one-time stupid kind of occurrence. Like it just mislapse in judgment. And I know when I got my DUI, I had a lawyer who, made it very clear to me that the law doesn't say that you can't drink and drive. The law says you cannot drink over this amount. And so I was like, you're right. Thank you for, kind of giving me, not judging me, right? But it did kind of clarify things, because how many of us are getting in the car with with a blow and go, or you're testing your alcohol level after you're, leaving your friend's house after a dinner party or something. So you can very easily have, over the legal limit in your system, and that leads to a DUI. So I'm going to move into the slides here. I believe we're going to start with, the pilot minute from Dr. Susan Northrup, the federal air surgeon, and I am hoping it will play.
Pilots may wonder, what happens if I get a DUI? Find out in this pilot minute. Any DUI or DWI should be reported in Item 18V in MedExpress. Your AME will also check to see if you've had any prior DUI offenses within the past 5 years. The National Driver Registry will automatically perform a check, but your AME will need to know if you had offenses outside the statute of limitations or in a different state. So what happens next? You and your AME have 14 days to submit an alcohol event status report to the Office of Aerospace Medicine. This report contains your personal statement regarding all substance use, the documented blood alcohol content, which if over 0.15 must be deferred to the FAA, court and police reports including breathalyzer and sobriety test results, your driving record for the past 10 years, and any evidence of substance use treatment. Keep in mind, if you refused a roadside test, it will be considered a failed test, meaning a positive test. You must submit a written report to FAA security within 60 days of a DUI, DWI conviction or other motor vehicle action. Even if the DUI, DWI is older than 60 days, submit it anyway. Drinking and driving or drinking and flying just isn't worth your life or the life of those you love. Stay on the ground and call a rideshare. For more information, click the links in the video description. Until next time, see you up there.
So here are a couple of the URLs to go to for this information that's coming up. I just wanted to put it in the PowerPoint. So essentially, where do you start? This is the DUI, DWI alcohol incident. This came out in June of 2024 for all classes. I'm going to go to break it down. So if you look at you have had an alcohol event in the past, or if you have a special issuance already, this is what the AME is going to need. These are this is the way it's broken down. So basically, the condition, what the AME needs regarding that condition, and then the disposition is that the AME can issue or defer to the FAA. So condition A is a history of alcohol-related event or previously reported to FAA and written proof from the FAA that monitoring is not required. So the airman should bring his or her letter from the FAA about this condition for the AME to review, and the AME would review the letter and obtain any additional history necessary. So what the AME needs to do is annotate in the block 60 and then can issue that based on that condition. So here's where it gets a little more, people want to know a little bit more information on, okay, I had a DUI. Okay, well, what was your blood alcohol content, right? Was it over 0.15? Was it 0.20? Or was it 0.08? So if it's a single event, or if single event that was 5 or more years ago with a blood alcohol content of less than 0.15, the AME should gather information regarding the incident, including date, events surrounding the incident, history of other events, or any other prior treatment programs. It is highly recommended that the AME obtain all items on the airman drugs and alcohol personal statement. So what is that? We'll get to that in a minute. If AME determines through exam and interview there is no current or historical evidence of a substance abuse or dependence problem, then the AME can issue. Again, if you go back to our episode, our session on choosing an AME, that is really going to be determined upon your AME. If they feel comfortable issuing, what level of experience they have in all of the HIMSS, in their experience with HIMSS. So it's yes, they can issue, but it's also dependent on the AME. So again, the AME is going to summarize this history, annotate in block 60, and then submit the airman drug and alcohol personal statement. Again, we'll go over that in a minute. And then condition C, if it was a single event less than 5 years ago, or a single event at any time with an unknown blood alcohol content, if you refuse the blood alcohol, refused, or if the blood alcohol content is 0.15 or above, the AME must complete the alcohol event status report. We'll go over that in a minute. Or write a summary report that includes all of the items on the alcohol event status report. If the single event was 10 or more years ago, the blood alcohol content or court records are unavailable and the AME has no concerns, you can call AMCD. So they're going to follow the instructions and, oops, went back, and then submit the information to the FAA for review. And the last condition, condition D, would be 2 or more events in the airman's lifetime. So say I I have a friend who had 3 DUIs before he turned 21. He, got one when he turned 16, 18, and then 21. And then he was sober for almost 15 years and had a very successful business, always wanted to fly and own his own airplane. And so he would fall into this category. Thankfully, he was sober and working a good program and had been. And so it's going to take a little more work, but it's still doable, right? So if you had 2 or more events in an airman's lifetime or a history of dependence or substance use disorder. So if you've been to treatment and you have a diagnosis of substance dependence, you're going to fall into this category. So the AME is going to submit the airman's personal statement, alcohol event report, and then also defer. But you're going to also go through probably a lot more in the evaluation data as well. So the note here, if the airman does not qualify based on the results from the DUI alcohol event history, all of that supporting information must, trying to move this so I can see it, but must be submitted for consideration of medical certification. So see the FAA certification aid drug and alcohol initial for details. So that is the checklist that the AME is going to follow to ensure that all of the data is that the FAA wants to make a determination is available to them. And I lost my, there it is. So this is the alcohol event status report for the AME. Again, you would fill this out. As you see at the top here, it says Airmen, see the FAA certification aid, drug and alcohol initial to identify what information you should give the AME. So all of this information is in the AME guide. You can also do a Google search. It's also in that link that I had put earlier, and we'll link it in this down below in the web comments. So the AME instructions, they're going to go through this whole list, and if anything is marked in the gray area, then they're going to defer. If everything is marked here in the white, then they can possibly issue. So that kind of it still kind of goes over what we just went through with the disposition table on the conditions. It's just in a different format and asking a couple other questions as well. So the next list where I'm not going to touch every single area in the HIMSS certification drug and alcohol initial checklist because we are going to talk about it in more detail when we have the psychologist and the psychiatrist on. They're going to talk about their individual parts. So initially, you just want to go through this list and ensure that your AME is following this, that they have everything that they need on here. And I'm just going to touch, it's 5 pages long. If you went to treatment, you're going to want your drug and alcohol treatment records. This would be the psychiatrist evaluation. So this puts in very detail what they're looking for from the psychiatrist evaluation. And then on page 3, you have the neuropsychologist evaluation and raw test data. And that outlines what is required there. Aftercare. So if you have a dependence diagnosis or you're in one of the more complicated cases, you are going to have to uh, go into aftercare or be doing aftercare. And that is part of the step down process as well. And we will talk about the step down process in another session. So if you have questions on if you should or shouldn't be in an aftercare program, I would ask somebody, definitely ask your AME, but maybe ask a couple peers as well, because sometimes the AMEs say, no, you don't, but the peers would probably might be a better judge of whether or not you might need to be in aftercare. Just for certification, there have been a lot of non-airline aviators that have had their cases delayed because of aftercare. We'll say that. So just get some clarification on that as well. And then the airline reports is, now this is really more so for non-airline aviators once you get your special issuance, but for airline pilots, as part of the HIMSS program, they are getting airline reports while they're pre-special issuance. So they're getting a peer pilot and their chief pilot, they're having monthly reports written on their behalf. That is something that you could go above and beyond and do as a non-airline pilot, but we know that the FAA knows that it's not, you're not in that same situation, but it would be prudent of you to have those reports kind of put together. It would only help your case even more if you found a peer pilot that would support you in writing a monthly report, as well as you can talk to your manager or supervisor at work who might want to just write a report that, again, is just attesting to your, behavior, condition, and that you're showing up on time. So the personal statement, wanted to spend a little bit of time on, touch on it a little bit more because we wanted to provide some examples and we just did not have that time to get to that together. But I'm going to read through it because the personal statement is a very important piece of your case. I thought for a really long time that the FAA didn't want to hear what I had to say. I thought they only wanted to hear from the doctors and that they wanted, that was the recommendations that they were looking for, and they didn't care what I had to say about my condition, right? That is not true. The personal statement is very important for you to basically share your accountability to your and testify on your sobriety and 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 your testament to yourself and to your awareness of the situation and how you have grown and what you have done, and what you are doing for your recovery and for your sobriety. So it goes into basically how I did my personal statement was that I just hit every single one of these questions. And my statement was quite long. It ended up being 7 pages, but my case was pretty complicated to go through everything. So question or I guess topic 1 is a detailed typed personal statement from you that describes the offense. A, what type of offense occurred? B, what substances were involved? C, state or locality or jurisdiction where the incident occurred. D, date of the arrest, conviction, and/or administrative action. E, description of circumstances surrounding the offense. And F, describe the above for each alcohol incident. If no other incidents, this should be stated. 2, your past, present, and future plans for alcohol or drug use. probably shouldn't have any future plans, but you might. Um, A, when did you start drinking? How much? How often? B, how much? How often were you drinking at the time of the incident? C, how much? How often do you drink now? If abstinent, state date abstinence started. D, any negative consequences, legal complications, or medical complications such as blackouts, pancreatitis, or ER visits. And E, include any other alcohol or drug offenses, arrests, convictions, or administrative actions, even if were later reduced to a lower sentence. 3, treatment programs you attended ever in your life. If none, this should be stated. A, dates of treatment. B, inpatient, outpatient, other. And C, name of treatment facility. Uh, treatment facility. And the current recovery program, if any. If AA or another program, list name of program and frequency attended. If not in recovery program, this should be stated. We are also going to go over what does a good recovery program look like? That will be a future session because that's going to be a lot of information as well to go into. So moving on to, again, the personal statement cannot be overstated enough just of how important that is to give your own testimony on your wellness, your current state of wellness, and your sobriety. The rest of the medical certification or the FAA certification aid, page 5 is going to be your drug or alcohol testing, your DUI records, medical records, and if you had any other special issuance reports. So as you can see, if you have not looked this over before, it is a lot of information to gather and compile. And that is one of the things, again, that you could be doing before you have submitted your 8500-8, you could be gathering some of these things together, like your DUI records, your court records, getting your testing records together. So I think we're just coming to that was a lot of information. And thank you all for listening. Next session is going to be kind of a similar rundown, but with the mental health and SSRIs and going over kind of that new disposition table for mental health if people haven't seen it, and that you actually can see your therapist now. So please join us June 17th at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. Thanks. Back to you, Tammy.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Yay. And I appreciate you sharing your little bit of the backstory about writing your personal statement. And I remember we had a brief conversation with Morton, and he said his was 14 pages. So I don't think he's going to mind that you shared that. He did mention, of course, he had a little longer experience because it took him a while to be convinced. All right, we are going to move now into the question and answer time. So thank you for joining us today. We have Stephanie, some members of the Clear Sky team working in the background. We also have I see that Dr. Paul Sargent, he is a HIMSS psychiatrist, and Tim Markley is on the HIMSS advisory board. He's a pilot who's on the HIMSS advisory board. I got a note from our little staff that they are here too. We'll send them a message and see if they'd be willing to come on and act as panelists to answer questions for us. Looks like coming to hear them when they unmute and possibly see them if they want to use their camera. Thank you so much, Paul. And there we go.
Hi, everybody.
These are for just general questions. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll read them out loud. Other people can't see what's in there. Oh yeah, go ahead,
and
Stephanie.
Tammy, before we go into questions and answers, I just since we have Dr. Sargent on, and Tim, if they had anything that they wanted to add real quick about the information.
That's an excellent idea.
I'll chime in. I thought you did just a fantastic job of kind of going through, the AME guide and kind of showing the nuances there. I think with personal statement stuff, it could be 7 pages, it could be 14, it could be 1.5. Be honest, like I see a lot of folks who, like you, are afraid to write a statement, but truth be told, it's just exactly what you said, which is like it's an opportunity for you to show the FAA kind of how you think about your situation, what you've learned, give them a reason to think that you have insight that what led to the problem and why it's not going to happen again in the future. So, even if a page and a half is really valuable, don't feel like you have to write 7 or 14 pages. Over.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Tim.
Yeah, hi. Welcome. It was a great job, great overview of what's there. The things that we really tell our pilots when they come is it is overwhelming, and get ahead of it. Get ahead of it, because there's a lot of times get help because to find out what to do, because there can be a lot of circumstances. My medical's due in 4 months. It's below 1.5. Do I need an assessment? It is really, really challenging to navigate at times, depending on the situation. So getting ahead of it, getting to somebody that knows, right, that can kind of direct you and guide you, because it's obviously scary and it's very overwhelming. But forums like this and things like that, there are people that will certainly help people navigate through that. I do this 4 or 5 times a year. I just went through this with a pilot that refused to test a BAC test. You know what I mean? On a DUI, and all the ramifications of that. And he gets the court, they get the court order to do it, and he comes back 0, 0, 0. Right? On the court blood test. So it's like, why didn't you just blow? You got all these other ramifications. So it is get ahead of it and get some people to help guide you, because it can be really overwhelming. So that's all I have for now. Great job. First time I got to be here. You folks do a wonderful job. I'll hang around and see if I can help.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Stephanie, I guess you can ask the questions too. Do you want to roll them, or should I?
Go for
the
it,
first one
Tammy.
kind of relates. Okay. And you can jump in to answer them. There we go. The first one kind of relates to what you said about it's a little confusing. So the question is, they had a DUI 10 years ago with a 0.14, so that's nearly 0.15. They reported it to the FAA, and 10 years ago, I guess nothing else happened on that one. And recently they got pulled over for speeding and got a breathalyzer with slightly less than 0.08 blood alcohol content. Should they do action like go to an inpatient now, or what would you recommend for them?
That would be considered 2 events in a lifetime. Okay. And the FAA in that situation would require a substance abuse assessment from a qualified assessor that understands the aviation regulations. You know what I mean? So you want somebody that specializes in aviation. It could be a HIM psychiatrist, but it could be people that just specialize in that. But again, I've had these situations, and I've advised people, depending on when their medical is, because in a case like that, the AME probably could not issue that medical, most likely. You know what I mean? They would have to defer it. So we actually encourage people, if you got 4 or 5 months, you're further ahead to go get the assessment and get it done. And if it comes back negative, you send it in, you report on your medical. If not, what it usually happens, it gets deferred, and then you have to wait to the FAA to send you a letter to get the assessment. So in that case, the trigger is the 2 events in a lifetime.
Can I clarify one thing about that? Was it below 0.08?
It was, let me look it up. Yeah, slightly less than 0.08. So
that they still get a second DUI.
Yeah, that would
I
be
guess
that would be a question.
Yeah, because if they were pulled over, they blew, it's less than a 0.08, and there's no, it's a second event for sure, like Tim says, but there is
Right.
no not, if it wasn't a second DUI, I mean, if somebody had a .14, or, in the past 10 years ago and they got pulled over with a .03, do they need to do anything with that? Probably not. I mean, we always want to tell your AME just to disclose it, but what's the difference between a .03 and a .079? Good question.
Good
If it's
question.
because you didn't get the second DUI, I think the AME, go talk to your AME, let them communicate to the FAA and kind of give you the guidance on that. I mean, you could definitely go get a substance abuse evaluation to be proactive on that, and that's going to strengthen your case probably because if you don't, if you haven't been drinking in a compulsive, addicted sort of way, and that should come out in that substance abuse evaluation. It might strengthen your case when you do, go to the. That's a tricky one because it's the line.
And thank you for the correction, Dr. Sargent, because you're right. That maybe wouldn't necessarily, but a lot of that depends on the AME, on what they may do, and they defer it. So that's why this can get complicated really quickly
Yes,
on these situations.
we
Yeah.
definitely suggest consults before you submit forms, right? Like, yeah.
Hmm.
Yes,
Hmm.
definitely. We do have a question asking again about the personal statement, saying, do personal statements really have that much of an impact on FA decision making? So I would, yeah, Dr. Sargent, I would maybe defer to you on
Yeah, they do.
what you
You've
think
laid
of
out
that.
some really clear guidelines, and you've laid out like, hey, here's these parameters, here's these wickets. If you're above a wicket, if you're up over a .2, and you write a personal statement that says, I don't think I have a problem, that personal statement is probably not going to help you, right? You've passed this hard objective wicket, and so the subjective part may not help. But if you're writing a personal statement to kind of talk about your recovery, though, or after the events, you've stopped drinking, stopped using, or even in an SSRI case, talking about like, this is how depressed I was or how anxious I was. This is what my treatment plan is, and this is where I'm at now. I think the personal statement goes a really long way with the FAA to get a sense of you as a person. They're always just making a risk assessment. And if a person is able to explain their scenario in a way that's thoughtful, um, and it shows that there's some change, I think it's going to go a long way for them to see that as a protective factor. And I think that Penny Giovanetti at the last advanced conference that we were at, and we missed you, Tim. We did miss you. Um, the She had said, because the diagnostic stuff is so hit or miss out there in the community now, somebody can go in and really have the same symptoms, see one doctor and get one diagnosis, see another doctor get another diagnosis. What they really want to work towards now is looking at risk factors and protective factors instead of being super fixated on diagnoses, at least on the but to answer your question, yeah, know, is there any reason to think it wouldn't matter? Does anybody disagree, or does anybody have any reason to think it wouldn't be really important?
Right. I would just say from my own experience where before I kind of had the aha that, oh, they really do want to hear from me. I was thinking that I was kind of out of the equation. Like they only want to hear from the doctors. Like my statement doesn't matter, right? Like
Mm,
I'm getting these diagnoses and I'm supposed to have the doctors clear these diagnoses kind of thing.
mhm,
So that was my misconception until really I heard one of the FA psychiatrists basically giving some case studies and stating how valuable the personal statement was. And then I realized, oh, they actually do want to hear my my part.
mhm. Yeah, and when so Stephanie and Tim and I will sit in the advisory board meeting, and the people in the room there will include sometimes the federal air surgeons in there, or Matt Dumsdorf, who's in Oklahoma City and is reviewing all these. Having plenty of personal conversations with Matt Dumsdorf along the way. Can you imagine Matt Dumsdorf not caring about what the personal statement says? It's almost hard to imagine, right? Because I think Matt's very much going to care about that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we have, what is this other question? It says be prepared that something will show up on the driver's record. I'm not sure if that's just a statement or
I think
if
that's a
that's
statement, but the other question uh, uh,
you, Tammy, you're
came
sketchy. I'm
up on
sorry.
that backside is what if that up or not? Oh, I see. Will something show up on the internet if it's really old? I mean, will everything show on the driver's record when they do the search?
The driver's record, I believe, is the last 5 years. But Tim or Dr. Sargent, do you have? And
Uh,
then it's the last 5 years. From my understanding, it's the last 5 years, but then you are supposed to disclose if you have any other offenses.
yeah, that's definitely that's not my area of expertise, so I wouldn't want to comment on that. I don't. I'm not certain, so I'm not going to make something up. So I don't know about that.
I I did
Someone
recently
did
watch a
ask,
YouTube video about it, and I will link it in I will find it and I'll link it in the to the webinar.
in one of our earlier webinars, Lucas shared that she was advised it might not show there, but if an incident happened and they wanted to fight it, the people investigating it would come up with it, and then her insurance would be null and void for. So that might be one consideration.
Can I ask Tim a question? I can't see the question list, and so if there's one waiting, you can wait. But one of the things for the group here is to realize, like, Tim Markley is with NetJets, and they have really an impressive program as far as getting pilots back into good sustained recovery. And so, Tim, I would, if you had a friend who is in general aviation, right, they don't have the advantage of all the corporate structure, the robust systems that you've set up for your pilots, but they wanted to have somebody who could represent that chief pilot role or the peer pilot role for them in their life. What would you advise them on how to fill those roles so that they
Well,
could get references?
you can do it. A lot of times, reaching out on a forum like this, you could get people that are in airline programs, and if they live locally with you, that could probably work with you because I know that AMAS has set general aviation programs up, and they just have to get. They'd like to get another pilot, but you want to get somebody that's close to them to do it, and it can be done. You know what I mean? It can be done. It has been done. You know what I mean? But also, I think the FAA is not as particular on that particular piece, knowing the general aviation challenges with that. I mean, if you have a crop duster, God, gentlemen,
Mhm.
good crop dusting for a living and travels all over the place, they don't, that kind of requirement they know they can't really do, type of a thing. But I do know, and too, as long as we've been doing this, the FAA is very flexible on general aviation pilots to find something that works. You know what I mean? They're very flexible in and from what I've seen, you know what I mean? If that makes sense. I don't know if that was helpful or not, but
Wow, I am really grateful for all the questions and answers. We were concerned we might not have enough, but we are running out of time. So hope you'll come back for some more of our seminars and actually be a part of it. That was very helpful. And I've also heard that CFIs that you work with are a good source because the FAA knows they're a known quantity that's proven to have good assessment value of what's safe. So I think that might be another one that could be used. And unless there's a real burning desire question, I think I better wrap it up or we'll be
I'll
going
just
over.
put in a plug just for the website, HIMSS program, not HIMSS.com, because that's male enhancement, but HIMSSprogram.com. Go there and you'll just find all sorts of great resources that will help you to understand the condition, the way the FAA sees it. Might help you with your personal statement, to kind of think about how the FAA is thinking about things. So if you haven't been to the HIMSS program website, I think you'll find lots of great stuff there.
you'll also find all the list of the HIMSS chairs. So even if you're a general aviation pilot, you ask how would somebody get stuff, you could start with a HIMSS chair, to at least explain the website, that sort of thing. Because I don't know any of them that wouldn't try to help a fellow pilot. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Uh,
think
or
That's a
point you to
great point.
somebody that could help.
That's a
they
great
probably
point.
didn't become
Don't be
hymns
scared.
chairs
Yeah.
without passion. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
People are
exactly.
intimidated. They're like, I don't want to bug them. You're not bugging them. These are wonderful people who enjoy being of service.
Mhm.
Well,
Thank you
okay.
both.
We
Thank you
are
both
going to
for
wrap it
being here
up
and for
now.
adding.
Yeah. Sorry. Didn't mean to step on you, Stephanie.
No, I just wanted to say thank you both for coming on and adding that information too.
So much. Right.
Really appreciate it.
So, Clear Skies, we believe in improving aviation safety. It requires regulatory change and cultural change. That's what we're doing here. Because aviators will feel safe to take care of their health, the entire system will be safer. You can find the resources. These webinars are recorded. We just talked about some other tools on the Clear Skies Ahead nonprofit.org. We have links to all the tools that were discussed here. We also do support, recommend fellow travelers, which is a confidential peer support for not necessarily involving alcohol, and Birds of a Feather, which is an Alcoholics Anonymous group that has an aviation focus. And our next session will be next. Stephanie just said it. I don't have it in front of me. Our next session, June. Do you have it handy, Stephanie? Go to the
June
website and
I
find
believe
17th.
it
out.
was June
June
17th. Thank you,
17th.
Tim.
Thank you
June
very much.
17th.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks for letting us go a little bit over, and I hope you come back next month.
Goodbye, guys.